What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, folks, I've got some big breaking news. Again, check this out. Justice Department renews bid to unseal Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell grand jury materials. And what's so funny about this, I scrolled all the way to the end of the article when I was reading this, and I was looking through the comments, as I always do, to kind of try to see what Democrats are arguing here. And they were going on and on and on and on about, Donald Trump still hasn't released the Epstein files and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, did this person not even read the news article, right? Because once again, what did that say? Justice Department renews. Do you not understand what the word renew means? This means that they are trying again. They are starting something up that they have started in the past. Donald Trump and the Department of Justice have already tried to unseal these records before. Twice, as a matter of fact. I've covered both of those news articles right here on this channel. So, for all those people that are out there saying, well, Donald Trump's trying to obfuscate what's going on with Jeffrey Epstein because he knows he's involved. BS. I call that's just a bogus, ridiculous argument there, John, by the way. Anyway, once again, they've already tried to unseal the pertinent information because, you could go and get all the investigative files out of the FBI coffers or whatever, their file coffers, and release all that information, but none of it is going to incriminate anybody because it's the investigative files. Anything that is of any importance to the case to figure out if other powerful individuals are involved has all been sealed by the federal courts. All of it. That is why they haven't released the files, because everything that the FBI has that they can release, they have released. Everything else is sealed up. The federal courts are also protecting anybody that was involved, like at the island receiving a massage from underage girls or whatever. Like they are protecting these people on a vast scale, if it was that vast. We just don't know. We have no idea how many powerful individuals, and we all know that there had to be some powerful individuals involved in this, that Jeffrey Epstein was blackmailing these people. We want to know about these things because why else would these people get involved unless they are just sick individuals? That could be, there might not be any blackmail, and, pedoism, if you will, could be just that prevalent. Let's get into this. All right, quick. The Justice Department on Monday renewed its request to unseal grand jury transcripts from Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's sex trafficking cases, arguing they should be made public under a new law requiring the government to open its files on the late financier and his longtime confidant. I still love how they call him a financier, because once you could build the most amazing bridges in the world, right? But you get found with kitty or whatever, you're not going to be known as the most prolific bridge builder. You're going to be, the kitty pee guy, right? Yeah, you're going to be the guy that had the stuff he wasn't supposed to have. You're not going to be the other dude, right? So it's just funny that they still call him a financier. Like, to me, that seems like the Associated Press is trying to cover up for this dude just a little bit. U.S. Attorney Jay Clayton cited the Epstein Files Transparency Act passed by Congress last week and signed into law by President Donald Trump in court filings asking Manhattan federal judge Richard M. Berman and Paul A. Engelmeyer to reconsider their decisions to keep the material sealed. Yes, they should definitely. It was those judges that decided not to release the Epstein files. I've been saying this for a while. Other people know this information. I don't understand how this information hasn't been more widespread than it has, right? Kash Patel said this several times in 2 different hearings. Answered this question over and over and over again. The federal courts in New York are concealing all the pertinent information. Any important stuff that we may want to know about who was involved and what actually went on. Like, who was he trafficking these girls to, perchance, right? Things of that nature. It's these people. It's not Donald Trump. But everybody is blaming Donald Trump, right? Even though Donald Trump said he would release the files. Pam Bondi said she would release the files until she ran into that federal court brick wall. That's when everything stopped. It wasn't the fact that Democrats started, like, once again, these people believe, right? Like, before Democrats started accusing Donald Trump of being tied to Jeffrey Epstein, of being in the files himself, they just ignore the fact that Trump was going to release all the files. Think about that for a second, because they said as soon as Democrats figured out that Donald Trump was involved and started speaking out about it, all of a sudden the investigation went away. They didn't want to release the files anymore. Like, are you kidding me with that? Are you serious? Like, don't you think Donald Trump would have known that he was involved with Jeffrey Epstein before that point? Like 6 months ago? Yes, he would have known that because he would have been the one that was involved with Jeffrey Epstein. It's just like Democrats just don't think about their own positions here. They think that somehow Democrats expose them, right? Like the Wall Street Journal published that letter that clearly is a smoking gun that ties Donald Trump to Jeffrey Epstein, even though that's been debunked, as a matter of fact. That whole letter, right? You can't prove that Donald Trump wrote that letter. It's debunked, right? It's not his signature. Donald Trump doesn't sign things Donald. Plus, it just sounds creepy anyway. Donald Trump has never made any other creepy doodles like that before. It's just weird. It's an anomaly. Once again. Oh, it's so weird. The Justice Department interprets the Transparency Act as requiring it to publish the grand jury and discovery materials in this case, said the 8-page filings, which also bear the names Attorney General Pam Bondi and her second-in-command, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. The filings are among the first public indications that the Justice Department is working to comply with the Transparency Act, which requires that it release Epstein-related files in a searchable and downloadable format by December 19th. The Justice Department asked Berman and Engelmayer for expedited rulings allowing the release of the grand jury materials, which contain testimony from law enforcement witnesses but no victims, arguing that the new law supersedes existing court orders and judicial policies that would otherwise prevent public disclosure. So hopefully that's how this is interpreted by these judges, and maybe that's why this hasn't been released in the past. Maybe just the Justice Department asking them to unseal these files wasn't enough. Now the fact that almost every single lawmaker, every single congressperson has voted for this except for one, which, by the way, just so happened to be my congressman. Make me look bad, for crying out loud. Like seriously, I forget what podcast it was on, but I heard them talking about this, and they were like, well, maybe that guy's constituents don't want the files released because maybe they're tied to them. It's like, are you serious with that, though? Like, that's one of the most ridiculous arguments I think I've ever heard, my dude. I was underage at that time when this was going on, supposedly. Anyway, these people are absurd, y'all. Like, his argument, I think it's stupid, and I'm never going to vote for the dude ever again. But his argument was, you're going to destroy lives, because in this day and age, right, it's not only guilt by association, which is clearly what Trump is guilty of, but it's also guilt by accusation. Because anytime somebody is accused, all of a sudden, hang on just a second, they are guilty, right? They absolutely did it when they get accused of anything. It's ridiculous. Shut up, Saint. Please, I'm trying to record, buddy. But anyway, in its filing Monday, the Justice Department said any materials made public could be partially redacted to prevent the disclosure of things like victims' identifying information. In an order late Monday, Engelmayer invited Maxwell and victims of Maxwell and Epstein to respond by December 3rd to the government's request. The government must respond to their filings by December 10th. The judge said he would rule promptly thereafter. The Transparency Act compels the Justice Department, the FBI, and federal prosecutors to release the vast troves of material they've amassed during investigation into Epstein's decade-long sexual abuse of young women and girls. The law mandates the release of all unclassified documents and investigative materials, including files related to immunity deals and internal Justice Department communications about whom to charge or investigate. Berman has previously said that the grand jury transcripts in Epstein's case amount to about 70 pages, along with a PowerPoint slideshow and call log. The only witness to testify was an FBI agent who had no direct knowledge of the facts of the case, Berman noted in his prior ruling. The FBI agent testified on June 18, 2019 and July 2, 2019. The July 2nd session ended with grand jurors voting to indict Epstein. He was arrested on July 6, 2019 and found dead in his jail cell on August 10, 2019. The same FBI agent testified before the Maxwell grand jury and met in June and July 2020 and March 2021. The Justice Department has said the only other witness was a New York City police detective. The Justice Department first asked Berman to unseal the grand jury material in July, doing so at Trump's direction as the president sought to quell a firestorm after he reneged on a campaign promise to open up the government's so-called Epstein files. Once again, there they go. Now they are trying to manipulate everything. Trump didn't renege on anything. All the pertinent information, the grand jury transcripts, and all the files that have anything to do with that are being sealed by the federal circuit. He can't release that. That's what everybody wants to know. Who was involved? For goodness sakes. Engelmayer, who presided over Maxwell's 2021 sex trafficking trial, ruled first. In an August 11th decision, he wrote that federal law almost never allows for the release of grand jury materials and that casually making the documents public was a bad idea. And he suggested that the Trump administration's real motive for wanting the records unsealed was to fool the public with an illusion of transparency. Engelmayer wrote that after privately reviewing the grand jury transcripts that anyone familiar with the evidence would learn next to nothing new and would come away feeling disappointed and misled. Who is to say that? Once again, that's the same thing the Trump administration is saying. That's the same thing the Democrats. They're all making these arguments that everybody is obfuscating everything and everybody is hiding everything. Well, how about you guys just release all the information and let us know? How about that? Once again, they're trying to downplay. But how do you indict somebody? You got to know co-conspirators. You got to know all this other stuff. You got to know if they, the evidence as to what crimes they committed. That's going to be in those grand jury transcripts, for crying out loud. It's insane, y'all. This is insane. Disappointing. Like, once again, folks, with the information that we have now, do you really think you could indict somebody on that? I don't think so, folks. I really don't. I really don't think so, because we don't have much of anything. We absolutely don't. There's absolutely no proof, right? The Ghislaine Maxwell trial, for one. That's going to prove everything outright because you have to go through discovery. Discovery is going to be involved in that. Now, the grand jury transcripts from Epstein's grand jury or whatever, that's different because he never went to trial. But Ghislaine Maxwell did. And that trial, those documents, that's all sealed as well. They're trying to brush this off like it's nothing. Oh, well, you're not going to learn anything new. Right, my dude. Well, how about if we're not going to learn anything new, we already know this. What is the blood clot here? Why not release the transcripts? Just because it's abnormal? That seems fishy to me. Once again, the federal circuit, they're protecting powerful individuals here. That statement right there makes that clear. The materials do not identify any person other than Epstein and Maxwell as having had sexual contact with a minor. They do not discuss or identify any client of Epstein's or Maxwell's. They do not reveal and heretofore unknown means or methods of Epstein or Maxwell's crimes, the judge said. Yeah, I mean, you can look at it. It's right there. It says heretofore. I've never heard that word before. I don't know if that's real. But anyway, once again, this person is trying to say, well, you know, there's nothing to see here, folks. There's absolutely nothing. Which this is the same argument that they've been making. There's nothing to see here. Right? That's what we got from Kash Patel, as a matter of fact. There was no client list. And I've posited in the past there doesn't need to be one. There absolutely doesn't. But the investigative files should absolutely have anybody that was tied to this, right? Once again, like I was always saying, there never needs to be any concrete documentation that anybody was involved in this. There doesn't. The people show up, do their thing, and leave. Why write any of that down? Once again, we need to know people that were on the island. But at the same time, and this was the concern of my congressman, that anybody that went to that island is from now on going to be a pedo, just outright, straight up. In the public view, they are going to be irreparably harmed by this and irrevocably tied to Jeffrey Epstein, because there is no documentation. There is no client list. There never was a client list. The flight logs is about the only hard documents that we have from this. That's it, folks. How else are we going to find this information out? This is why they're kind of hesitant to release this, because once again, if you're on the flight logs, if you went to the island, doesn't mean a damn thing. It truly doesn't. Right? It probably does. I'll agree with you guys on that. It probably does, but it not necessarily. So you could destroy innocent people in this. And that was a concern of Clay Higgins, which it's a genuine concern, but it's still not enough of a concern to release the files. To not release the files, sorry. It's all insane, y'all. Berman, who presided over Epstein's 2019 case, ruled about a week later. He concluded that a significant and compelling reason to deny the Justice Department's request to unseal the Epstein grand jury transcripts was that information contained in them pales in comparison to investigative information and materials already in the Justice Department's possession. Yes, but what you guys have, once again, ties everything else together. It does. Once again, the Justice Department, I can see, the FBI not wanting to release because they don't have anything concrete on anybody. That's why they don't want to release names or whatever, because once again, you don't have to have a client list. The closest thing we're going to get to that, like I said, was the flight logs. So all of their investigation found absolutely nothing, because once again, you don't have to have any hard documentation of this. We're never going to know the information that we want. That's why I think that's part of the reason why they've been so hesitant. But once again, if the all the information that the courts have is a big nothing burger, then why did they seal it, for one? And number two, why did they prevent prosecutions of anybody connected to any of this? Because that was part of the deal, right? That was part of the whole deal, that they prevent prosecutions of anybody tied to Jeffrey Epstein. I wonder why that is. That is a fascinating facet to all of this, folks. And I think, that right there spells doom for all of this. Right? For all of these judges in particular. Because why would they do this in the first place? Why would prosecutors and the judges actually agree to not prosecute any of these people that were tied to this? There's something that they're holding on to. There's got to be something pertinent in here that they're holding on to that would actually spell doom for a lot of people. Because why else would they seal it? Like I said, doesn't make any sense. And then be so abrupt about refusing to agree to the Justice Department. They just no. They're making up all the excuses in the world, folks. They absolutely are. Of course, the FBI and the Justice Department kind of is too. So I don't know who to trust here. But like I said, I can make the argument as to why some of that information we're just never going to get. We're never going to have concrete proof of anything. Anyway, Berman wrote in his August 20th ruling that the government's 100,000 pages of Epstein-related files dwarf the grand jury transcripts, which he said were merely a hearsay snippet of Jeffrey Epstein's alleged conduct. Yeah, but once again, if the information is good enough to indict on, it should be good enough to the public. And once again, that is completely ignoring the fact that Ghislaine Maxwell went to trial and went through discovery, and they've got all that information. All of that information is sealed up. They didn't mention that, did they? Oh, well, they just quickly mentioned, oh, well, there's nothing here, folks. The Justice Department has all that too. Yeah, but once again, if the information from the Federal Circuit is sealed, the corresponding information the Justice Department has, they can't release that either because it's the same information. So that's something else that's being ignored by all of this. That information can't be released because it would violate that sealed information, essentially. They have to agree to release that for the Justice Department to be able to release everything. That's just how that works, folks. This is all insane. I hope all this crap comes out. I hope these judges agree, even though it sounds like they're not going to, or at least in their previous arguments, I don't see them changing their position all that much, but hey, you never know. It is what it is. But we shall see, folks. We shall see. We are ever inching closer to getting transparency on this, but like I said, don't expect much, y'all. Don't expect much at all. But I think that's all I got. I want y'all to let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. Y'all don't forget to smash that like button for me. Subscribe if you're new around here. Share this video anywhere and everywhere you can. That's the biggest and best way to help this channel out. Second biggest and best way, right? It's the mediumest way to help this channel out. Click the join button. That's the bestest way to help this channel expand and grow. Y'all do all that for me. Sign up, become a member, all that good stuff, because you need to. You know you want to. It's like eating. You just got to. But anyway, folks, you guys remember that God has a plan for all of us, even Epstein, clearly. And, you know, you might not see it. You might not know what it is, but it's yours. It's tailor-made just for you. And he loves each and every one of you out there. So y'all try to have a good day. Stay on vacation. Peace.